It all started as a misunderstanding, an innocent mistake that spiraled completely out of control. My boss, Alexander Carter, was one of those larger-than-life figures who commanded attention the moment he walked into a room. He was intimidating, brilliant, and infuriatingly good-looking. As his assistant, I was used to dealing with his demanding schedule, his late-night emails, and his almost impossible expectations. But nothing could have prepared me for the chaos that unfolded during a corporate retreat in Vegas. What was supposed to be a straightforward team-building weekend turned into a nightmare, or maybe a dream, depending on how you looked at it. The night it happened, the team had decided to hit the strip after dinner. Alex wasn't much for mingling, but somehow he ended up tagging along, likely to keep tabs on everyone. I'd never seen him relax before, but after a few drinks, he actually cracked a smile. I remember thinking how different he seemed, more human, more approachable. Somewhere between the flashing lights of the casino and the endless flow of champagne, we ended up alone at the hotel bar. He started talking about his struggles, how lonely it was at the top, and how he admired my work ethic. His vulnerability caught me off guard, and before I knew it, we were laughing like old friends. The details of what happened next are still a blur. What I do know is that I woke up the next morning in a hotel suite, wearing a ring I didn't own, with Alex sitting at the foot of the bed, looking just as stunned as I felt. "What the hell happened last night?" he asked, holding up a marriage certificate with both our names on it. My heart dropped. Married? To my boss? I couldn't even process it. But before we could figure out how to undo the mess, someone else came knocking. Alex's estranged wife, who had no intention of letting us walk away unscathed. The moment the doorbell rang, I knew something wasn't right. Alex looked as if he had just seen a ghost. "No, no, no," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. He quickly stood up and tried to move toward the door, but I grabbed his arm, stopping him. "Who is it?" I asked, feeling an unsettling knot form in my stomach. He didn't answer, just kept muttering under his breath. That's when I heard the voice, sharp, familiar, and unmistakably furious. "I know you're in there, Alex. Open the door, now." I froze. It couldn't be. But it was. Standing in the doorway, looking every bit the part of a woman scorned, was Natalie, Alex's wife. She was tall, impeccably put together, her eyes burning with a fury that made my stomach twist. It took me a moment to realize that she was glaring at me, and not just him. My first thought was to run, to hide, but I was rooted to the spot, horrified by the realization that I was the last person who should be in this situation. Alex had been married to Natalie for years, and I had no idea their relationship was on the rocks. "Natalie, please," Alex started, his voice strained, as if he were trying to defuse a bomb. "This is not what it looks like." But she wasn't having any of it. "Really? Because it looks like you're married to your assistant," she snapped, her gaze now turning icy as it locked on me. "Or did you forget that little detail in your drunken stupor, Alex?" I stood there, unable to find my words, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. How had this happened? One minute I was just a loyal employee. The next, I was married to the man I worked for, and his wife was standing right in front of me, ready for revenge. Before I could speak, Natalie stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "You think this is some kind of joke? You think you can just waltz in and steal everything I've worked for?" Her words were sharp and cutting, and I could feel myself shrinking under her gaze. But Alex, to his credit, stepped in between us, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. "Nat, let's just talk about this. We'll fix it," he said. But Natalie wasn't interested in talking. Things quickly spiraled out of control. Natalie refused to leave, her rage building with every passing second. It was clear that she wasn't just angry about the marriage. She was livid about the whole situation, the betrayal, and the humiliation. She turned her attention back to me, her words slicing through the air like daggers. "You think you can just waltz into my life, take what's mine, and there won't be consequences," she spat, her voice filled with venom. I tried to defend myself, but nothing I said seemed to matter. Alex was standing there, frozen, trying to figure out how to make this all go away, but there was no quick fix. The damage was already done. Natalie's fury was palpable. She started pacing around the room, raking her hands through her hair as she vented. "You think a stupid piece of paper makes you his wife now?" she sneered, glaring at the marriage certificate still sitting on the table. "You're just some office assistant who got lucky one night. I've built an empire with that man, an empire you know nothing about." Her words hit me harder than I expected, and I felt my stomach churn with guilt. I hadn't set out to destroy anything. I hadn't even meant to get married. But none of that mattered to her. All she saw was me as the enemy, the woman who had come out of nowhere and taken everything she thought was hers. As the argument escalated, Alex tried to step in again, but his efforts only seemed to make things worse. "Natalie, please, we're going to fix this. We didn't mean for any of this to happen. We need to..." But Natalie wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on me now, and I saw a terrifying look of determination in them. "Fix it," she repeated bitterly. "You think you can just undo all this? You think I'm going to let some little girl take my place? No, Alex, you've got to choose. Either you fix your marriage with me, or you face the consequences of your little fling." The way she said "fling" made my skin crawl. It was as if she was already planning how to make me regret everything, and I had no idea how to stop it. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on Alex now. It wasn't just about us anymore. It wasn't just about a mistake made in Vegas. It was about a woman scorned who wasn't going to back down easily. And as I stood there, caught in the middle of a war I never asked to be a part of, I couldn't help but wonder, what exactly had I gotten myself into? In the days that followed, everything became a blur of phone calls, tense meetings, and veiled threats. Alex and I tried to figure out how to handle the mess we had created, but no matter what we did, it seemed like the situation only got worse. Natalie wasn't backing down. In fact, she became even more determined to make sure that I paid for what happened. She started showing up at the office, acting like she had every right to be there. She'd send scathing emails, demanding that Alex choose between his real family and me, his new mistake. I couldn't avoid her forever, but it was becoming increasingly clear that her fury was personal, not just professional. At the office, the tension between Alex and me was palpable. We both knew we couldn't go back to normal after everything that had happened. I couldn't look him in the eye without feeling a mix of guilt and confusion. We hadn't meant for any of this to happen, but now we were both stuck in a whirlwind of emotions and consequences. Alex had been distant, trying to salvage his marriage with Natalie, even as she continued to escalate her attempts to ruin everything. But what really stung was that even though he was trying to make things right, there was something cold and distant in his eyes when he looked at me. He wasn't sure where we stood anymore, and frankly, neither was I. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from a private investigator. "I have something you need to see," the voice on the other end said, before sending over a file. When I opened it, I was shocked. It was a collection of photos and documents, proof that Natalie had been keeping tabs on me for months. She had dug into my personal life, found my social media profiles, and even tracked my family down. She had been planning her revenge from the very beginning. I was stunned. It was one thing to be angry, but this was something else entirely. She wasn't just out for revenge, she was out for blood. I showed the file to Alex, and for the first time, I saw the gravity of what was happening sink in for him. He didn't say anything, just sat there, staring at the documents. He was clearly torn, struggling with how to deal with his wife's obsession and the mess he'd created with me. But his silence spoke volumes. I realized at that moment that this was more than just a fight over a marriage. This was a battle that would test all of us, pushing everyone to their limits. And I had no idea where it would end. The following weeks were a blur of tension, threats, and uncertainty. Natalie's revenge campaign escalated to new levels, and every time I thought it couldn't get worse, she proved me wrong. She started sabotaging my work, sending anonymous complaints to HR about my unprofessionalism and inappropriate behavior with Alex. Of course, none of it was true, but the more whispers spread, the harder it became to maintain my composure. I felt like I was slowly being suffocated by the mess I never wanted to be a part of. Meanwhile, Alex's attempts to placate his wife seemed to do little to quell her rage. She was relentless, and I could tell that Alex was at his breaking point. One evening, after a particularly awful day at work, I ran into Alex at a local cafe. His eyes were tired, and there was a heaviness in his expression that hadn't been there before. Without saying a word, he slid into the seat across from me, his hands clasped together in frustration. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," he said quietly, his voice strained. "Natalie won't let up. She's got everything against us. She's pulling every string she can to tear us apart, and it's working." I sat there, frozen, unsure how to respond. Was he talking about his marriage or about us? It felt like everything was slipping out of our control, and no matter how much we tried to fix it, we kept making it worse. "I never wanted any of this," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't want to come between you and Natalie. I never planned any of this." My eyes welled up, the weight of the situation finally breaking through. Alex reached across the table and took my hand, his touch warm but full of guilt. "I know you didn't, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this mess." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. But as much as I wanted to believe him, the situation was far from simple. It wasn't just about him or me anymore. It was about the consequences of our actions, the choices that had led us here. And it was clear that Natalie wasn't done. In that moment, I realized that no matter how much Alex and I wanted to fix things, there was no undoing the damage. The woman who had been part of his life for so long was not about to let go without a fight. And I was right in the center of it all, caught between two worlds I never wanted to be a part of. I didn't know how things would end, but one thing was certain: I would never be the same again.